Hi, my name's Carlo Lamagna. We're here at Magna Cucina in Portland, Oregon. I am the chef owner. Moved here in Oregon about 8 years ago from Chicago. So the dish that we're going to be making with you today is called crab fat noodles. On the menu, it's actually mom's crab fat noodles. The reason why I call it my mom's crab fat noodles is the way that my mom used to cook blue crabs growing up in Michigan. Back in the day, when my dad was still alive and I was younger, my dad, my uncle, and a couple of his friends would drive all the way to Baltimore to pick up blue crabs, and they would drive them back to Michigan and sell them, which was always pretty funny. You know, the resilient, you know, just the kind of the mentality of just like, oh, they don't have fresh blue crabs, let's make that happen. So obviously we would get some blue crab for us. So my mom, the way that she cooked it, she would cut them in half and sear them with ginger and garlic and you know, add a little fish sauce to season it. And it's always this thing that, you know, whenever I ate it, it was you have to cook a big pot of rice, you know, because we'd eat it with the sauce and all that crab, the tedious time of picking the crab meat. It was always an experience, and that's what a meal was for us, was always an experience. It was a time for us to all gather together and talk and catch up. But this was one of my favorite meals. Now, the reason why I adapted noodles is because another piece of it is in the Philippines, there's a dish called pancit. Pancit is a noodle dish, but it's a catch-all term for many different types of dishes. This kind of puts a glimpse into how Filipino food is truly an evolutionary type of food. It drew in from many different influences, different cultures, because of how the country is placed geographically. It made for a great waypoint for a lot of other visiting countries to use as kind of like a jump-off point, right? So historically, we were very close to, we were just south of Taiwan, so that made it a jumping off point for trade routes for China. Hence, pancit is actually derived from a Chinese word. And the noodle culture also, and the introduction of soy sauce and all these different ingredients that we will be using was introduced through China. But again, Filipino food's evolutionary. The way that I described it, a lot of people say fusion, and I highly disagree with it. I believe it's evolutionary because the core food from the Philippines of the indigenous people are still there. They were just given other names through other cultures to describe it because they didn't know what to call it. But again, it's pretty amazing as our food evolved and the techniques evolved and the ingredients evolved. Now you see all these different smaller influences coming into play in all the dishes. So that's kind of the way that I cook as well. So the crab fat noodles is kind of a take on a pancit negro or pancit nero, a black noodle utilizing squid ink. So yeah, so that's kind of the quick and the short about our crab fat noodle. So our ingredient list is right here. I always like to use a pickle of some sort, which adds a little acidity to it. Since we're in the Pacific Northwest and it is fiddlehead fern season, we pickled a bunch of fiddlehead ferns and we can our pickles so that we can use it, you know, throughout the time. We have some sweet corn. We have some beautifully roasted shishito peppers. We have house-made squid ink noodles nice and chewy, really great flavor. Some picked Dungeness crab meat. And of course, the star of the show, which is our crab fat sauce. So our crab fat sauce is actually made with tabanan talangka, which is the fat from freshwater river crabs in the Philippines. This one we also supplement with the fresh Dungeness crab fat, if you will. From when we cook the fresh crab, we harvest everything and make sure we utilize everything. So crab shells turn into a crab oil, the crab fat turns into a sauce, the picked meat obviously is that nice, beautiful, decadent flavor that is also going to be incorporated into the dish. All right, so ready to rock. So I'm going to turn on our induction burner. You might hear a little whirring sound because it's all magnetic. So I'm just going to add a little oil to the pan. The reason why is that we're going to fry up some of our vegetables, kind of give it a little bit of little bit more flavor, complexity. This thing yells at you when you lift the pan, which is hilarious. All right, so basically it's like building blocks of flavor, right? So we're gonna build on developing the dish as a whole. So first and foremost, what I like to do is I like to add our raw sweet corn. It's been shucked off of the cob. Hear that sizzle. And then our shishito peppers as well. So if you think about it, it's kind of like a trifecta, right? You know, the Native American three sisters combination of peppers and corn, and then squash eventually. Actually, it's squash, beans, and corn is kind of that trifecta. But a lot of times that peppers and corn also work really well together. So incorporating those flavors. We're gonna add the pickling, a little bit of the pickling juice from the fiddlehead ferns. But we won't add the ferns right away because they're so delicate already in nature. Oh, I can smell that already. Whew. I'm gonna salt just a little bit. Layering flavors is always really important. And it's always important to season everything as you go. The reason why is that by the time the dish is fully finished, it'll be smaller adjustments. So you won't have to add as much salt or as much of other flavoring agents. Oh yeah, I can smell that already. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of the pickling liquid from the fiddlehead ferns. Reduce that. So that's gonna add a nice, really nice brightness to it, or this kind of base level of acidity. The way that I cook, I always try to balance all the flavors of sweet, salty, bitter, acidic. So all those things are incorporated to it. Even umami as that fifth flavor profile. The vinegar adds acid, the peppers add a nice little bitterness to it. Sweet corn is that fresh little sweet bite. So this is our crab sauce that we already made beforehand. So it has a lot of ginger and garlic and all those ingredients that I incorporated that we cook traditionally with the crab. There we go. So to heat that all the way through. So now all those flavors are coming together. Beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna bring that up to a quick boil. So notice I haven't added any of these more delicate components such as the crab meat and the fiddlehead ferns. The reason why fiddleheads are already delicate in nature, but they've already been pickled, so we don't wanna overcook them to kind of turn them into mush. And the crab has also already been cooked, so we don't want to overcook it. Once we add that in, it's going to kind of be this last minute thing, and it's going to create this beautiful sauce. So once we add that in, it's going to create this nice, beautiful sauce. All right, so these squid ink noodles we actually make in-house. It has a nice chew to it, and we par cook them. So all we have to do is reheat them in the sauce. So I will incorporate that right now. It's lovely. We're going to make sure to coat that. So the sauce has already been seasoned with a little bit of fish sauce. Noodles have been blanched in salted water, so I don't have to be too concerned about that. But if you're doing this at home from scratch, and the noodles are still raw, you can always incorporate them by blanching them in salted water, and that salt in the water will actually kind of absorb into the noodle itself. All right, since that's nice and hot, perfect. So it's at this point I'm going to add the last remaining of our ingredients just to heat through. Our picked Dungeness crab and our pickled fiddlehead ferns. At the restaurant, obviously we have all the ingredients prepared beforehand. But I also want to make a note that you don't have to be limited to just corn or peppers, all these things. The real star of the show is actually the crab and the noodles itself. Everything else is up to you. You can do scallions, you could do peppers, you could do squash if you wanted to. If you don't like any of those things, I'd use eggplant, mushrooms. There's so many different things that can get incorporated into it. It can become this like almost seasonal dish. So the last step is that I'm going to add a good healthy squeeze of lemon juice. Okay, that lemon juice is kind of the final bright acid aspect that you're gonna get, and it really brightens all the flavors and brings everything together at the very end. Okay, so this dish was actually one of the first dishes I put on the menu when we first opened up in 2019, and it then became one of the most popular dishes. Over the years that we've been open, there have been many different iterations of this dish, whether it was, again, using corn or fiddlehead ferns or, you know, mushrooms, some winter veg like radishes and whatnot. But again, the core of this dish stayed the same, which was the noodles and the sauce. You can see this really rich, really flavorful sauce going all on top of those noodles. And then I like to finish this with a good helping of fried garlic, which adds a lot of great texture and just a burst of flavor into that dish. So there you have it. This is Mom's Crab Fat Noodles here at Magna Cucina. Something that we've enjoyed for many a year making and constantly perfecting the dish. So there you have it.